Damn!
Alright, should we rip? Should we rip, Chip? Yo! Oh, this thing is gnarly.
What's going on there, guys? As you can see, I have a Street Fighter Suzuki Bandit in front of me. This is the most loved and most hated street bike on the planet. And technically, I don't even think it's a real street bike. I think it is a touring crossover bike. But this thing has raised so many eyebrows for so many years. It is such a crazy bike. And I'm going to tell you why that is the case. So let's have a chat. What makes this machine so crazy and yet so hated at the same time? Let's talk about it. What's going on, guys? I fix shit in your face. Today, we're going to talk about this monster here. Why is it the most loved and most hated street bike ever produced? It has a massive cult following of people. For those of you that have ever ridden one of these monsters, and I say that in all seriousness, one of these monsters, you have a slight inclination as to why these machines are so crazy. So I'm going to give you a little background history here. Every 1200 Bandit that has ever been produced has been a very rowdy, radical machine. And the reason why is what is under the gas tank. If you can't see that monstrous engine sticking out from the side of a standard size street bike, then you have a slight idea why. This engine came from the 1100 GSXR. This is actually bored out larger than the original 1100 GSXR, so this is actually an 1150, and it was dubbed the 1200. So this is technically an 1150 GSXR engine board. Not only that, these were super easy to modify. So let me just give you a little background history here so you have an idea of what makes this so crazy. These engines are bulletproof and they packed so much power. This is an original American, well, I don't want to say American, but this is an original muscle bike, okay, from the 90s. This thing, and actually I think this engine was produced originally in 89, but started coming over to the States. This would be one of the original American muscle bikes that showed up here. This thing packs a whopping 300 cc's per cylinder. That's crazy. That is crazy. So this engine is actually a hyperbike engine, or some of us have come to commonly call this the superbike. It is a superbike. It was one of the original hyperbikes or superbike platforms that were available that came from Japan to the US. And when they put that monstrous engine inside of this, they were like, let's make it weird. We'll give it a cruiser headlight, a cruiser front end, and we'll make it naked. And so everybody was like, they're used to sport bikes having fairings and all these other things. Upright seating position, raised handlebars, pegs underneath you instead of behind you like a sport bike where your legs would be way back here, upright seating position. I mean, this in all means was against everything that every sport bike rider understood or knew. But the reason that this thing was so ridiculous is because they packed this massive engine in this tiny frame. And then they were just like, it's a touring bike. Which in all reality, it is good at doing. But this thing pulls like a freight train. And I'm not even kidding you. This will wheelie, power wheelie, through third gear. Just don't worry. You don't have to look for the wheelie or slip the clutch. The wheelie will find you. It's not difficult. Just pull back on the throttle a little bit and she'll show you where the wheelie's at. This thing was just an absolute disgusting animal on the road. Nobody had seen anything like this before. This was unique in its own right, but people just they weren't used to it. They didn't understand the body style. They were like, looks like a street bike, but why are the pegs underneath me? That doesn't make any sense. What's with the front end on this thing? Why is it, what's with the headlight? Like, it was so weird that the sport bike people really couldn't engage with it the way they wanted to. Now, that didn't change or alter the fact that this thing's a monster. This is an absolute freight train of a ride. This thing packs over 120 horsepower stock. That's insanity. That's absolutely insanity. This has an inline four with 4 carbs. This thing is an insane engine in this bike. I don't even, look, they had a 600 version of this that was very laid back. So when people hear the name Bandit, they always think the 600 Bandit. And yes, that was a very docile, slow bike compared to this. In comparison, this is an animal. This thing is by no means a slow bike. This is an absolute monster on the road. Okay? Which obviously later the renditions that would have, come out, this would have been a predecessor to what you have now, like the Hayabusa 1300. Well, 100 cc's more. Now you got a Hayabusa. And then we have seen people turbocharge these, which puts them in the same lineup as the Busa engines. I mean, if you turbocharge this thing, it's a Busa killer, right? This is an iconic muscle bike from the 80s and 90s. And they were like, you know what? In the early 2000s, they're like, yeah, you know what? Let's slap a massive 1200 engine in this thing and just send it. And that's what they did. I think it started in like 98. I think it was 98, maybe even a little before that. Don't quote me on my history on this, guys, but this is a very unique machine in its own right. It is absolutely hated by almost all sport bike riders that hug tracks. This is not a track bike. I wouldn't even think you would want to try to take something like this down a track. This could hit the twisties and the windies really well, but is this a track bike? No. This is by no means a track bike. This thing is designed for long cruising, some twisties, and going ballistic in a straight line. This thing is an absolute animal. Let me just try to put this in a perspective that you'll understand. If pulls like a freight train doesn't register, let me try it this way. If you hit the throttle hard, your ass will feel like it is 400 feet behind you. And you're still wondering how you're able to hold on to the handlebars while the bike absolutely takes off like somebody shot a missile, right? That's what this does. This thing is crazy. This is insanity on wheels. I would never think about taking this down a track. Going fast in a straight line? Sure. Hitting some twisties in it? Yep. But the suspension on this thing sucks. It sucks, and that's why sport bike riders really did not like this. It is a rough ride. It's like getting a Corvette. There's nothing pleasant about the ride. It just goes fast. That's all it does. It just goes fast. For a touring bike, man, did they go cheap on the suspension on these things. They are garbage. Garbage, man. You hit a bump, you know you hit a bump. So that would make going through turns and corners on this very dangerous because the ass will kick right out from underneath you. So this is probably the most loved and weirdly hated street bike ever made. And I don't even think it's a street bike. It's like a hybrid crossover bike. But it has its place. This thing is, by all means, a budget-friendly monster. If you wanted to buy a bike that you were going to have fun with an absolutely bulletproof engine. Dude, I've seen these engines go forever. This prime example. This one has 60,000 miles on it. Most normal sport bikes are dead by now. They are dead. Barely ever make it to 30,000 miles before the engine is completely toast. This has 60,000 miles on it. So that tells you that engine that they built in the 89, I think that was when the engine was first released, was 1989. It was bulletproof. They made this thing like a tank. It's chattery. It makes all sorts of noise. It's got tappet valves. It is a noisy engine. But man, when you pull back on that throttle, this thing lets you know it is ready to absolutely shred the pavement and introduce you to Jesus earlier than you probably should. This is a rowdy machine. So the day I went to buy this, when I was telling myself like, okay, I'm going to buy this, I I thought I was walking into a 600. I was like, oh, that's going to be a pleasant ride. It's going to be nice. I didn't realize that she wrote the ad wrong, and it ended up being a 1200. I was not expecting to walk away with a 1200 for $800. And ever since I got this bike, I can promise you I have a lot of respect for this machine. Just a couple pulls on the, and any video you've seen me do so far is not showing you any love for this machine. I am being extremely gentle on the throttle in the videos you've seen of me ride this. Even if you think it looks slightly crazy with the way I'm riding, I promise you it's not. It's not. If I showed you what this machine is really capable of, you would be like, what the fuck? Yes, that's this machine right here. This thing was built to absolutely surprise you and make you go, what the fuck? That's what this machine does. So for everybody that hates on the Bandits and, you know, oh, it's a cheap sport bike. Is it a cheap sport bike? I don't think it is. I think they cheaped out on some of the components, but you can upgrade those, right? This is a budget-friendly monster that you can put on the road that is cheap. There's tons of them out there. You can get all sorts of parts for them for the low. They're easy to work on. The engines are just tanks. The most you'll have a problem with is probably your carbs and your transmission shifter cog stuff, but outside of that, that engine will go forever, and it will continue to impress you over the years. I promise you it will. This thing also has a very unique system that was designed by Suzuki that actually comes from, I believe they use this type of cooling, oil cooling, because this is an oil-cooled bike. I believe they use this type of cooling in aircraft's engines. Some aircraft, let's say it, some aircraft engines use this cooling technique. And it's Suzuki's, it's called the SAX system. And I haven't really gotten too involved in doing the research on the SAX cooling system, but it's a very interesting system that basically there's a high and a low oil pressure side. So I think there's two pumps really. One is pushing low, which I believe is what is actually circulating oil around the top of the piston and then through a few other little chambers and stuff to cool the top of the piston. So this is an oil-cooled bike. It does have an oil cooler on the front of it, so it's air-cooled and oil-cooled, but it has the SAX system, the Suzuki's, God, I can't think of the name of it right now, Suzuki SAX, Suzuki something, something, something. Anyways, just look up SAX, Suzuki's oil cooling system, and trust me, you'll learn a little bit about your bike, and it's a very unique system that they have on this thing, so it actually keeps the engine very well, even on hot days. It keeps it nice and cool. So I wanted to make this video because a couple people have like seen my bike now and they're like, oh yeah, I remember the Suzuki Bandits. They were pieces of shit and they were slow. Well, I'm pretty sure you're talking about the 600, because if you have ever ridden a 1200, then I think you'll have a radically different opinion as to what the Suzuki Bandits are. And don't get me wrong, they made a barrage of different Bandits. They made like a 400, a 300, something like that, a 600, a 500. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of different Bandits. If you had any of those, yeah, they were slow bikes. Definitely slow. But the moment they fucking popped a GSXR 1100R engine in this thing, and they bored it out 50 over, and this got the Dale Walker whole shot stage 2 kit on it, this bike became the most rowdy machine I've ever put my hands on. I have ridden a Hayabusa. Okay? I've been well into the 200 mile marker in 2008 on my buddy Hayabusa. This isn't designed to go that fast because it's only a 5-speed, but if you're looking for torque and absolutely whole shot out mid-range throttle wheelie technique, stuff like that, this thing is a cannonball. It is on a different level of crazy. So yeah, I didn't buy it for the speed. I bought it because it's fun for the tourneys. It's fun for my little roads and, you know, my little quick zip rounds and that kind of stuff. I mean, I bought it for those reasons. I didn't buy it to go fast, right? Well, reasonably fast. The bike will still hit like 150 miles an hour, but still, that's the average 600 and go 150 miles an hour. If this had 6 gear, this bike would break almost 200 miles an hour, no problem. So, but that's not the point. I'm not trying to go that fast. I wanted something that had radical mid-range power. So when you're like low in the RPM band at like 2,000 and you just crack on the throttle, and it just, you know, fucking different world, bro. That's what this offers you. That's what you get from a bike like this. This machine is special in its own way. I understand why it has a cult following of people, and I hope that helped you make a decision on whether you want to get a Suzuki Bandit or not. Now, all of my information here might not be 100% correct. I get things wrong. I'm just a dude on YouTube trying to help you guys make a decision. But if you ever hear people say that the Suzuki Bandit 1200 is slow, they are fucking have never ridden one, and they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no clue what they're talking about. They don't. Do not listen to them. They're full of shit. They have no idea what this machine is and what its capabilities are. They have just talked a lot of smack and don't know what they're talking about. I promise you. If anybody says that a Bandit 1200 is slow, that is a GSXR 1100R engine bored out. You want to tell me a GSXR 1100R engine is slow? You're out of your fucking mind. Please go sit down somewhere. Get your pencils, get your helmet on. You clearly have some mental instability problems. You have no idea what you're talking about. Please go sit down. So, with that being said, I hope that helped you guys. If this video was helpful, it helped you buy a Bandit or think about getting a Bandit, whatever. I hope that really puts things in a perspective for you. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. Before I leave, I'm not going to leave you hanging like that. I am going to say all Bandits are fun. Any motorcycle on two wheels is fun. Don't let me talking shit about the smaller Bandits throw you off like, oh, it's slow, so I have to get a 1200 now. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I own a 1200, and this thing is a rowdy machine. As a matter of fact, I don't even think most people should ride one of these that don't have experience or know how to ride. This is not the bike for you. This thing is a different animal. I've been riding a long time. I can handle this bike, okay? I am well aware of how to hold this thing to the road and what to expect from it, right? Even though I'm new to the bike, I've ridden a lot of big bikes, fast bikes. I've ridden it all. This has its little things that you have to adjust to that will throw you off, especially if you're a normal sport bike rider jumping to something like this. This is a totally different animal. It is going to act different. It's going to feel different. It's going to react different to the road. Once you get it honed in and you feel it, you'll know. Trust me. But don't let me convince you not to buy any of the other Bandits, because they're great bikes too, guys. Suzuki, you got Kawasaki, Honda, and Suzuki. Those guys just know how to make machines that last forever. But all the Bandits are fun. Even the 600s are fun. Yeah, they're not screamers. Yeah, they're not something like this, a Revzilla Godzilla monster on the road. But guys, it's a hyper bike, man. It's a super bike. It's a muscle bike. That's what this thing is, man. If you're looking for all the go, then you buy something like this. This is all the go all the time. That's what this is. You will find yourself having a problem chilling in the throttle. You won't want to. You're gonna want to. That's what you're gonna get with this bike. So, if you're looking for every once in a while speed, if you're looking for every once in a while traffic tearing and stuff like that, get a 600. Then you'll have your fun. You'll have low range throttle that keeps you slow in normal traffic, and then when you have your opening, you can like highways and stuff. This is just meant for tearing ass all the time around town and not going slow. That's what this is. And you get on a highway, this bike is a different animal. After about 8,000 RPMs, this bike is going to fall on its face, right? It's going to run out of gear. It's going to go, you're going to get close to that 12,000 rev limiter, and it's going to start falling on its face real hard. So this is a mid-range bike. Can you take fifth gear all the way to 150? Yes. Would I say it's healthy for the bike? Probably not. I would say a comfortable riding point for this bike would be like 130, 140. Anything after that, you're really pushing the bike hard because it doesn't have a 6th gear. If you gave it a 6th gear, it'd be a fucking ballistic machine. But I'm glad they didn't, because they have tuned the engine for the transmission and the power and the mid-range throttle for this bike, making it just an absolute torque monster on the road. It's a fucking GSXR 1150 engine in this cocksucker. That's crazy. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to smash that like button. Stick around for more content if you haven't already. You know what you need to do. You need to just reach right down there and just push that little like button to push me up in the algorithm. Dan's ready to grow. Let's grow with him. Come on, man. Be my hero. I'm not asking you to buy merchandise. I'm not selling you anything. I'm just selling you me. If I was worth your time, you know what buttons you need to push. If I helped you make a decision, you know what buttons you need to push. I helped you. Help me. Help me help you help me. And with that, I'll catch you guys on the flip. Deuces.
Are you sure this is okay? You're in country, dude. Live a little. Now, she's pretty sensitive, so go easy on the throttle, okay? All right.